Get in here, get in here, get in here, get in here. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to PETV Reacts, where we review movies and television series. Listen, as you all come in, please make sure you hit that like button. And if you like what you see, subscribe. If you're coming over from Pam Entertainment TV, which is my main channel, subscribe. If you found me out here in the zeitgeist of the YouTube land and you're not familiar with my Pam Entertainment TV uh, first channel, it's down here at the bottom. You see it scrolling down here, Pam Entertainment TV, Pam Entertainment TV on all my other apps. But if you are subscribing to this channel, it's PETV Reacts. And let's get into y'all. Let me tell you. Let me tell you this little story about this movie. Because I had no intentions of watching it, had no intentions of reviewing it. Shout out to my friend Kim. She had seen this movie before. I get she had seen this movie before, and she was like, "Oh, we need to go see this movie. We need to go see this movie." I'm like, "Okay, we're going to see this movie." I was only familiar with the movie by the name. I never did see the movie, didn't know what the plot was, none of that. So I am doing the review on Wuthering Heights. It came out yesterday. We went to go see it. This is going to be a spoiler-ish review. I'm not going to tell you the whole plot. I'm just going to read to you what it's supposed to be, what it is about, and then go over what I saw. Okay? Now, Wuthering Heights was a book written by Emily Bronte back in 1847. And it's a gothic tale of love, revenge, and obsession set against the backdrop of the Yorkshire moors. And I guess that's over in England. The story centers on Heathcliff, a mysterious orphan adopted by the Earnshaws, and his passionate bond with Catherine Earnshaw. Their love is complicated by cruelty, vengeance, and social class conflict, and ultimately leads to Heathcliff vowing revenge on both the Earnshaw and the Linton families. Okay, now that's what I got just looking it up via the Googles. Okay, so we have this version of Wuthering Heights, and I'm going to take you over here to IMDb. So it is directed by Emerald Fennell, and it's written by the screenplay was written by Emerald Fennell, and the book was written by Emily Bronte. It's starring Margot Robbie, Jacob Elordi, Hong Chow. There are other stars in here too. Let me make sure that I get them right. Martin Clunes. If you ever watched a show called Martin, was it Martin? What was the name of that show? But anyway, he played in it. You have Alison Oliver as Isabella. You got Shahzad Latif as Edgar. And you have a whole host of different people down here. Young Kathy, young Heathcliff, young Nellie, all of these things going on, right? So when it was sold to me, it was this romantic, unrequited love drama. That's the way it was sold to me. I'm going to tell you what I saw. First of all, it set the stage with a hanging. Now, knowing that it's a gothic thing, that's one thing, but the way they shot this, because first of all, it was dark. When you looked at it, everything was dark. You couldn't see things clearly, and you got that it was cold. It seemed like it was always cold. They always seemed cold. You can tell that the Earnshaws were on the downward spiral of their luck, meaning that they had been around a huge family in that area for a very long time. But it seems like their patriarch had pretty much they were land rich, money poor. So they had a lot of land, but their land wasn't making them any money. So they had a lot of land, but they didn't have a lot of money. And the patriarch appeared to be just a mean drunk. That's what he seemed to be. He seemed to be a mean drunk. So then again, I'm not trying to spoil it all. I'm just trying to tell you my thing was. I thought it was dark. The mood of it was set with that hanging. And I don't know if the story started off with the hanging, but the way that the people were around and what they were doing in regard, it was almost like they were watching a mixture of the Super Bowl and porn. Because they seemed, from the women, the men, and the children, they seemed to have some kind of sexual, lustful high from seeing someone get hanged. And the way they came into that shot, you heard the heavy breathing. Now, you heard the heavy breathing, and if you didn't see what was going on, it made you think that someone was somewhere uh in the middle of having sex. But that's not what was happening. What was happening is we were hearing the final throes of someone being hanged, and they were trying to breathe, and they was choking, and it was just a whole bunch of stuff. That in itself did not set the mood right for me. I was like, nah, this ain't good. So then we get into the movie, and everything skipped. They made the assumption, I think, when they wrote this and directed this, they made the assumption that everyone read the book. And so they left a lot to chance, because I couldn't figure out the father's stat. You had to glean that later on when he died. But I couldn't figure out their position in the world or who they were, because they were so isolated. There wasn't, I mean, you didn't see the father, because apparently the father finds Heathcliff. Heathcliff is being beaten by, I guess, his father or somebody, and he steps in, Mr. Whatever his name is. He steps in and he brings this orphan home. He brings the orphan home, and they don't even know his name, so they name him Heathcliff. We don't see any of that. So we don't have really any type of endearing qualities about the father either way. We don't see anybody but the father, the servants, and this dilapidated house. It's a big house, it's a big farm, but it's dilapidated. Then we get into it, and I thought it was going to be a horror film, because, honey, there was a jump scare at the beginning of this, and I thought this was leading into a horror film, but it wasn't. It was about two people that were of different classes, different caste systems, different classes. They were all brought together, and it's just the lustful reactions of being around somebody, having this type of tension. Just lustful tension. Is that what I kept seeing? Just lustful tension. And it wasn't romantic at all. It was just grungy, lustful tension. And there was just so much sexual salaciousness for the sake of sexual salaciousness. This was one of those things, because as I'm going through it, I realized that possibly this should have been a series, a series on Netflix, because you couldn't flesh out all the stuff that needed to be fleshed out, uh in my opinion, because I was lost. I didn't understand the connection between Nellie and Catherine. It wasn't until later that I realized that she was like her governess. Didn't even understand those connections, because I just thought that she was just the maid servant in the house, but she was actually her governess. She was actually sent there to look after Catherine. Catherine is played by Margot Robbie. Heathcliff is played by Jacob Elordi. And Nellie is played by Huang Chao. And I'm doing this purposely because, again, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I have to tell you something so that you can, I don't want to appear like this is bouncing around. But the relationship between Catherine and her father, as a child, I guess because her mother had died, she had just been allowed to do whatever she wanted, say what she wanted, go where she wanted, do what she wanted. She was a child. Her father, in turn, was an adult child. It was everything centered on him. All of his motions were never regulated, and he was a drunk. And there is a scene that gives you the scope of how much of a drunk he was. And so the only stabilizing adult like person was Nellie, who was her governess, who was taking care of her. She was the only one looking out for Catherine in a way that Catherine wouldn't appreciate. Catherine reminded me of a feral dog. Cute, and we'll let you sit, but other than that, you really couldn't really get that close. Just a feral dog, just running around and Heathcliff was just like a malleable puppy. So you've got this feral dog and this malleable puppy, and it wasn't going to be right. Heathcliff was in love with Catherine. Catherine was in love with Heathcliff. Catherine, on some level, understood her status and she wanted more for herself. But Heathcliff was the manservant, so to speak. He was he was brought in. From what I saw in the movie, he wasn't brought in to be on an equal basis with Catherine. He was brought in to help clean the stalls and all this other stuff. That's the level of where he was brought into. So they, like I said, it was a class status. They had this very lustful tension, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that these two young people were allowed to roam free on this land by themselves, and it reminded me that part of it, how they were being very lustful. What is it? Blue Lagoon? Is that the movie that with oh Lord, what is her name? Brooke Shields. You remember Brooke Shields was in this movie? There was some kind of either plane crash or shipwreck, and her and the blonde head guy were just left on this island, and they were by themselves, and they had this kind of this type of tension is what I remembered, and then we find out that they were actually brother and sister, and they had a baby, and I think that was Blue Lagoon. I think that's what the movie was called, Blue Lagoon. That's that kind of tension that, when you leave two people like that to their own devices, that lustful sexual thing will come up. Then we meet the Hintons. The older brother is taking care of the younger sister. They move out there to the Yorkshires. And what's interesting to me when I look at them, it's like purposeful isolation for some reason, but it was good for Mr. Hinton. It wasn't so good for his sister. And so he had to entertain the sisters. I don't understand. They had enough money where they lived at and everything. They had enough money to build this wonderful, big, pretty estate out there where they lived. And I could not understand, and I couldn't figure out how old Nellie was at this point. I couldn't figure out why he didn't take her, during that time. Didn't they go like finishing school or something like that? But it was more so. I'm trying to get Isabella is her name. Isabella. Edgar and Isabella. I don't understand why he didn't have Isabella off at a finishing school, because usually in this time, in this age, they were trying to merge families together and all this other stuff. I'm surprised that he didn't have her sent off to be married to somebody. So Isabella is living in isolation, and she gives me, you know, she's with her brother. Her brother is older. You can kind of tell that she was one of those late in life kids. Don't know what happened to their parents. Don't know any of that. They don't tell us any of that in the story. So they're just over there across the way. Kathy Earnshaw sees them come up. She is wondering why they don't come. And because, again, her family seems like they were well to do. And her father, just like I said, they were land rich, cash poor. And her father pretty much drank that money away. Because her servant, her governess, is pretty much close to the age of Catherine, it's hard to reel Catherine in. And so when there's certain protocols that they're supposed to follow, Catherine doesn't follow those protocols. She goes over and she wants to see what's going on over there with the Hintons. She goes over and I think she breaks her ankle or she sprains her ankle, and she ends up staying over there for 6 weeks. And let me tell you this, the Hintons literally live 3 to 4 miles away from where she lives. So back then, at that time, that was a very, very long way. And she walked all the way over there. So that's a very, very long way for her to walk to spy on the Hintons. But anyway, things transpire. Mr. Hinton asks Catherine to marry her. She accepts his proposal. But with her accepting the proposal is what runs Heathcliff away. Now, we find again, Nellie is the only person that I could say in this whole group that understood station, understood what needed to have been, what needs to be done so that Catherine can be taken care of. And she does a lot to do that. And there's some lying and some uh, withholding truths and manipulation and all this other stuff. All of that happens. All of that happens. So Catherine marries Mr. Hinton, and they have a great life. She's fine with the great life, but then Heathcliff comes back. Heathcliff comes back. She wants Heathcliff. Heathcliff wants her, but she realizes that she's married, and she finds out that Nellie did some manipulation, and had that manipulation not had happened, she would have possibly gone off with Heathcliff, because Heathcliff comes back and he's made a considerable amount of money. So she's figuring that had she gone off with Heathcliff, they would have been able to make a lot of money. She would have been in a different status, yada, 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 this, yada, yada, yada. And then it just goes downhill from there. And when I tell you, there was like sadomasochism. I didn't say it right, but you know what I'm talking about. There was a lot of that going on. There was a lot of jealousy, just revengeful spirits. There was with Catherine, she basically gave up. She basically gave up, and just it seemed to me that she was wishing herself to die. That's what it felt like to me. It's like she gave up. There was a lot of manipulation going on in regards to Nellie. It had Nellie pulled back a little from that manipulation, I think Catherine would have seen the forest for the trees a little bit. But overall, that movie was dark. It had a lot of lustful, sexual, grotesque tension, in my opinion, that could have been shown on the screen a little bit better. I mean, it was just to the point we didn't need to see 45 seconds to a minute of someone masturbating. We didn't need to see that. It was a lot. And I think that visually, I think that's what was more important to the filmmakers. I don't think the story was important because, again, to me, they never explained why the hanging, we had to see the hanging, why we had to see those people feel looking like they were in the throes of a lustful episode. We didn't get that explained. We didn't get it explained why Catherine had an obsession with hanging. We didn't get it explained why Mr. Earnshaw was a drunk, what happened, what led to that. We didn't really get explained to what happened to Catherine's mother. We just got a little small dialogue that Mr. Earnshaw didn't like her for some reason. We didn't get any explanation as to who Heathcliff was. We didn't even get any explanation as to what Heathcliff was doing. They didn't even do a little monologue, a little side by side monologue. We got this, not monologue, but just this description of, we saw how Catherine, how her life was with the Hintons, and we went through a whole thing. We knew nothing of what happened with Heathcliff. We don't know how he made his fortune, because he made his fortune to the point that he was able to purchase Catherine's old, home, even though it was in its dilapidated state. WTF. WTF. I feel like this story, again, as someone who didn't know anything about it, as someone coming in, this, as someone who didn't know anything about Worthington Heights, this introduction was bad. It was awful to me. It wasn't it what my friend presented to me and what I saw on the screen was totally different. She said, "You got to go to YouTube and you got to watch the thing." I'm going to do that and see if they fleshed the story out a little bit better than this. But I think that this was just being salacious just to be salacious. I think Emerald Fennel read the book and got aroused, and she thought that he or she thought that they were going to get on here and give you a point by point, play by play of this type of arousal type movie. Because when you watch the trailer, it gives you love story, but when you watch it, it's not the same thing. What you see is just not the same thing. And so out of 5 stars, I'll give it a 2. I'll give it a 2. I'm gonna go and check out my friend. I'm gonna see what she saw, because she was able to, she found her lines that she was able to quote, I guess, from the movie to the book, and from what she saw, she was able to quote those lines. But this was just awful. This was just awful. You just have two people who were in love, and there was some manipulation going on to where they weren't able to consummate that love. And then once they were in the situation that they were in, Catherine was married, Heathcliff was coming. It was just, I would say this would be one of them stories that you would see on Snapped. You would got It would have been better narrated by someone who was narrating on Snap. I just am not gonna hold you. All right, people, we do this every week. That is my review. Again, I give it 2 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed the costumes. I enjoyed the jewelry that they were showing. I did like, it was really dark in a lot of places. I liked the world of the Hintons. That seemed very It was isolated beauty, but other than that, I didn't do. I was truly waiting for the end. Truly waiting for the end of that movie. So if this is what you into, it is out in theaters right now. Go see it. But 2 out of 5 stars. All right, people. We do this every week. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video if you care. That is my review of Wuthering Heights. That's starred Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, written and directed by Emerald Fennell, with the book being written by Emily Bronte. So y'all go check all of that out. Bye-bye.